In 476, the Western Roman Empire ended without a final battle. No last stand, no decisive invasion. A single administrative decision removed an emperor from office. The structure that had ruled the known world for centuries simply stopped being useful. Empires do not collapse when they are defeated. They collapse when power no longer needs them. Rome, late 5th century. Ravenna replaces Rome as capital. Emperors are appointed, not feared. Real authority sits elsewhere in land contracts, tax exemptions, and military payrolls. The anomaly is documented. Rome still had armies, still collected taxes, still controlled territory. Yet decisions were no longer made in Rome. The official narrative speaks of barbarian pressure. The quieter reality shows something else. A shift in who benefited from the system continuing as it was. Power was not attacked. It was reallocated. The Roman case is not unique. Han China, the Abbasid Caliphate, the Spanish Empire, the British Empire, the Soviet Union. Different cultures, different technologies, same endpoint. Each empire reached a phase where expansion slowed. Maintenance costs rose. Administration became more complex than production. At that point, collapse was not sudden. It was procedural. Empires are built on extraction. Taxes, labor, resources, legitimacy. At peak scale, extraction becomes optimized. At post-peak scale, extraction becomes defensive. This is where the misalignment starts. The empire exists to manage value, but the people controlling value begin to benefit more from bypassing the empire than maintaining it. This is never announced. It is never written as policy. It shows up in exemptions, special contracts, and temporary measures. Empires do not fall when borders are breached. They fall when rules stop being enforced equally. Rome sold tax collection rights. The Ottomans outsourced military command. Britain delegated governance to corporations. The USSR decentralized economic decision-making without decentralizing political accountability. Each case produced the same result. Local actors gained power without bearing systemic responsibility. The empire remained. Its incentives did not. From the center, everything still looked stable. Maps unchanged. Ceremonies intact. Currencies circulating. But the cost structure had inverted. Empires are viable only when the cost of control is lower than the value extracted. When that ratio flips, enforcement becomes symbolic. At that moment, power begins preparing for exit, not defense. This is the critical moment. Not invasion, not rebellion, not economic crisis. A decision to stop correcting inefficiencies. Rome stopped reasserting central tax authority. Britain stopped enforcing imperial trade exclusivity. The USSR stopped intervening in satellite economies. These were framed as pragmatism. They were actually withdrawals. The empire did not fall. It was allowed to expire. After this decision, outcomes become predictable. Infrastructure degrades. Military loyalty fragments. Peripheral elites gain autonomy. The center continues performing power. Real power relocates. By the time collapse is visible, it is already irrelevant. The point of no return is not decline. It is financial decoupling. Every empire falls after the same mechanism activates. Those who control capital stop needing the imperial structure to protect their interests. Rome's senatorial class shifted wealth into land immune to imperial taxation. Spanish elites moved capital into colonial trade networks outside crown oversight. British financial power detached from territorial governance. Soviet elites privatized influence before privatization was official. This is documented. Contracts, land records, trade charters. internal memos. Once this happens, the empire becomes an expense, not an asset. At that moment, collapse becomes inevitable because no dominant group is incentivized to prevent it. Empires do not fall because they are mismanaged. They fall because they are managed correctly for the wrong objective. The common belief is that collapse is failure. The structural reality is that collapse is optimization. The empire exists to organize power efficiently. When a more efficient structure becomes available, the empire is abandoned. Nothing is hidden. Everything is visible. The mistake is interpreting loyalty as identity instead of utility. Empires die when they stop being useful to those who matter. Every empire follows the same arc: expansion through centralized authority, stability through administrative complexity, decline through incentive misalignment, termination through capital exit. The winners are consistent: financial elites, local power brokers, systems that inherit infrastructure without responsibility. The costs are less visible: cultural disintegration, loss of shared meaning, generations interpreting collapse as chaos instead of design. Empires do not fall apart. They are shed, not because they failed, but because power moved on. This is not a mystery of history. It is a repeatable mechanism of power, and it has never stopped operating.